from where you at. I came here for vengeance, watch your back. No need to defend, I'm on attack. Sorry they can't reply, but I guarantee they had a blast. Pop, 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 I be on the next only, yeah, I am fresh to death.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Long Haul Mentality. I am your host, as always, Nick Bagley, and today I've got a really exciting one. I've got my man Kris Gethin with me today. How are you, Kris?
Kicking ass, taking names, brother. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, dude. You said you're back home for a little bit?
Back home for 2 weeks. Yeah, I've taken 44 flights this year already.
Jeez,
so
man.
I'm happy that I'm at home for 2 weeks before heading to Vegas for the World Peptide Congress. That's my next travel. So down to Vegas.
That'll lead well into the conversation we'll have later. But that's good, man. Where were you before you got back home for 2 weeks?
So I was in Carolina. I was there for about a week. I was doing some filming out at HQ with Unmatched. And then there's a band, I don't know if you've heard of them, Bullet for My Valentine.
Oh,
so yeah. So I know the guys from there because they're from Wales as well. And they were on tour. Yeah, so we filmed a workout and went to their gig later on in the evening. So it was a cool way to end my trip in Charlotte.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Actually, it's funny. My parents lived in Charlotte until my dad retired. I'm from North Carolina, so...
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, so it was like Statesville and Mooresville. That's where we were spending most of the time. But then spent our last night in Charlotte because the band was there.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I'd spent time in Charlotte, but I was quite impressed. There's just so many gigs playing, so much on.
Yeah, so once I visited Dallas, I was like, oh, Charlotte's just a small Dallas. It's a little bit more compact. Everybody's a little bit more on top of each other, but there's a lot of similarities to those cities. But yeah, I'm from the Raleigh area, and then I graduated from UNC Greensboro. So I was in Greensboro up until I moved to Texas.
Right. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's a cool spot.
Oh yeah, it's very nice. I haven't been back to North Carolina much since I moved out here, but my best friend gets married in August, so I'll be back out that way to see family before long. So it'll be nice.
You'll have to go to one of Doug's gyms that he's got there if you have time.
What's his name?
Doug Miller. He's my business partner.
Oh, yeah.
So he's got the Crush It Coliseum gyms up there. So he's got some pretty badass gyms to go check out if you're in that area.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll be able to get out to Statesville. It'll be over towards Raleigh, so it's enough of a drive where it's like a little inconvenient.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but
next time
we'll see. But yeah, so honestly, I got to say first and foremost, Kris, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. I mentioned this before we got talking, but you were one of the first people who really taught me how to train, and not directly. We didn't work together one-on-one, but you had all those different trainers on bodybuilding.com, and around the time you were putting that, I think you had already put out one or two when I really got the bodybuilding bug, but your programs were some of the first programs that taught me how to create training, how to create intensity, how to build physiques and stuff. And that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk to you about this stuff today. First, I want to go down memory lane with you a little bit. What at that time, bodybuilding.com was the place to be when it came to anything bodybuilding wise. They were a hub for that kind of stuff. What was it like building those things, and how did you come up with that idea to begin with?
So there was only 40 of us in the office when I started there. I was living in LA prior, and I was working for Flex Magazine, Muscle and Fitness. I was publishing my own magazine a little bit later, and I'd taught myself photography as well as writing. And Ryan DeLuca, who was then the founder, wanted an editor-in-chief. So Boise was the HQ, so that's what brought me up here. But I was the only person in that office that was competing. I was competing drug-free since 1999, and this is going back to 2007. And he really wanted me to document the process of getting in shape and putting on muscle and all that sort of stuff. And I wasn't really comfortable with that, to be honest with you, because I was used to being an editor, writer, photographer. I like being behind the scenes. I'm not really too much of a social butterfly, and I definitely didn't have the confidence to be in front of a camera. But luckily, he pushed me towards that, because he wanted to create something where, hey, if you were to ask somebody how to get in shape, how to get ready for this, how to prepare for this, then you could basically live with that person for 8 weeks, for 12 weeks, for 4 weeks. So you could get an understand of the emotional attachment behind that person, and they all go through the struggles that you see, getting sick, having to travel with 48 meals or whatever it may be, because it's what we do. But unless people see those things, they don't open themselves up to that idea. So that was, the protocol behind it. And they were very challenging because you got a video camera or camera crew in your face every single day for 12 weeks. And when you're a private person like myself, it was pretty tough. But now everything's online. It was just
Yes.
very, very new.
You basically did a YouTube vlog before it was the thing, and just turned it into a training platform of like, all right, not only are you getting the videos, but here's the whole program and you can follow along with it. And I think in my fundamental years of developing into figuring out like, how do I do this thing? It was very it was very rewarding to be able to watch you make your meals, pack them, eat them, do the training, talking about that training, talking about like, oh, I don't feel like doing this today, but I have to do it anyways. It's like, it taught me what it was behind the scenes. Like the training stuff was there. Like we see people train all the time. Like there, you can go watch Jay Cutler and Branch Warren and Ronnie Coleman. You can watch them just train, but you don't see what they do the whole rest of the day. So this was the first time I got to like peek behind the curtain almost of, what does it mean to follow a lifestyle of a bodybuilder, and I think that, like I said, that your training videos like really started me off down this path. So in a lot of ways you kind of shaped who I've become today, because I wouldn't have been so excited about it back in college had I had not had that. And that this conversation of us talking about this is going to lead into the main question that I had for you today, which is, I'm not sure how much you pay attention to the zeitgeist of the training world these days, but it has become, pardon my French, but a bit of a clusterfuck as far as like the knowledge that's out there and the people who are speaking on this stuff as if they have experience. And they're talking about avoiding fatigue. And it's like, hey, go do one of Kris Gethin's DTP fucking leg sessions and tell me what fatigue is after that. What happened to training hard and being fatigued after being the point, yeah.
Well, I think it's the environment as a whole, isn't it? It isn't just happening in the gym. It isn't just happening in bodybuilding. It's happening in society. People want to be coddled. People want to avoid discomfort. People are dying earlier because they're becoming more fragile and they're not facing their fears or turning their weaknesses into weapons. They're just turning away from that discomfort. But, I think you should always be uncomfortable. And, you never get used to it. People say, oh, but you get into an ice bath every morning, you're used to it. I hate it every single day, but I do it, because I know there is going to be a time when we're all going to become fragile. We are going to, it's going to happen, but why wouldn't we want to push that off? And that doesn't come from a physical standpoint. It all starts with the mental relentlessness that you have to have inside you to fuel you, to give you purpose, because otherwise I believe, there's probably no science that backs this up, but I believe if you don't have a real hard driving purpose in your life, and that means getting uncomfortable, then you could potentially die early. It's like the universe says, well, this person is not going to reproduce anymore. He doesn't have a strong purpose of life, and he isn't living or acting as a person that could potentially be 20 years younger. So let's get rid of him. Let's age him earlier and get rid of him, because we got to make room for some new blood. And it's just the way that I think, because as I'm getting a little bit older, I am pushing it off as much as I can. I'm in my 50s now, but I feel like I'm in my 30s. I've had a shitload of injuries, but look, we got stem cells now. We got peptides now. But you shouldn't turn away from discomfort. And I just think that's the 100%. Issue. People now try to turn training into something very scientific. It's very detailed orientated, and it's over detailed. It's over complicated. People overthink it. It's like, people say, well, what angle should I do this? I'm like, just push, just freaking push. Don't worry about the angles. They can come later. Let's get through the fundamentals first. Once you're maybe a pro athlete, then you can look at filling in those little weaknesses and gaps. Until you're that, shut the F up and just fucking push,
What's going on, everyone? Going to take a quick break from the podcast and check in with my main man, Everett, here. You can see the red light on behind me. That just means one thing. We're going to promote some sponsors right quick. There are no paid sponsors or paid ads for this podcast. So anyone who's watching, I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Share this podcast with your friends. Leave a comment. It does help a ton. The other thing you can do is help support the sponsors that work with me. And you see I have my Labrada Pro Series line here. So we've got the hydro, glutamine, creatine, and EAAs with some new pre-workout on the way. So if you like the podcast, you support me, use my code BAGLY10 at checkout and get yourself a discount. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, man. And dude, when you brought up that point, it honestly gave me like goosebumps a little bit, because it's not a point that anybody else has brought up. And it really is a symptom of just the world that we live in today, of like everything has become easy. Like, don't fatigue yourself in any aspect. You need you need to buy something. Don't go to Walmart, go to Amazon. It'll be here tomorrow. So it's like everything has become easy, and you're completely like, life is suffering. That is literally what it is. Like, if you exist, there's going to be suffering. There's going to be something that you have to deal with. Right.
Yeah.
And if you crumble and fall and go, well, everything's falling down around me, and then you just you just accept it, then yeah, shit's going to suck. But if you just keep grinding through it, eventually there's going to come a point where things start to ease up a little bit, and you can get some momentum and get ahead of things, and those things don't bring you down as aggressively anymore. And your last point there, as far as the training stuff is concerned, is like, dude, there's too many people trying to use a precision tool when there's nothing to be precise with yet at all.
Yeah,
right?
They don't even have a stone yet.
Yeah, right. Like, they still just have a big block that they don't even know what they're making, and they're trying to chip away the corners of it. It's like, you're going to have to take some chunks off that thing to get what you want first.
Yeah.
And in this context of this scenario, that means like, go in and just have enough muscle tissue to now refine later on.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly. And I think you had Hunter on your guest as a guest on here before. And if he's listening, this isn't a poke at you, Hunter, but he's got a lot to blame for a lot of this stuff, because he'll do a lot of unilateral lat pull downs and the rows and whatever. But what people fail to understand is that he's already built this crazy physique. He's already a valid pro that is very competitive. He is refining, like you said, that stone now. But you've got these kids in the gym doing the same shit as Hunter. I'm like, you've got no business doing this. You should be doing the basics first, and then you can look at that possibly later if it works for you.
Right. And that's a conversation that Hunter and I have had. Like, Hunter's a close homie, and we've had these conversations a number of times. And like, look, when I first met Hunter, it was in 2021, 2022, something like that. He wasn't training that way. Right. Yeah. He was in there doing heavy rack pulls, doing heavy deadlifts, doing like really intense, like barbell rows, like just completely brutalizing himself in the gym, until he got to a point where it was like, okay, I have the mass, I need to refine now. And now things have changed a little bit, for sure. And like, I think there's definitely some like, just because someone's a beginner, doesn't have a lot of tissue, doesn't mean that they can't use those implementations of a single arm pull down or whatever it might be. But it's like, you also need to like have the balls to go in and move some shit. Like, you got to just nut up or shut up at some point. And like, if you're trying to squeeze a weight and make that connection, but you're doing it with a 25 pound, you are missing the fucking point. Right? Like, just because you're squeezing it hard and feel your lat doesn't mean we're actually making progress here. You just feel something. Congratulations. Like, that doesn't mean anything actually happened. Get fucking strong first, put some stuff on the muscle, and then start to shape it. Then start to move towards more of those things. And it's such a great point.
Yeah, like I get nervous to this day when I go to the gym to hit like legs, or if I'm going to hit like a large body part, because I'll usually do like chest and back together now. Yeah. So if I'm hitting large body parts, I'm getting nervous because I know what I'm about to put myself through in the gym. And you're not going to get that all the time, but that's what you're always striving towards. And, the other thing that I always mention to people is like, they want the secret, the magic training principle, the angles, what was the greatest supplement and whatnot. And it's just the consistency, it sounds so cliche and boring, but it certainly works in life. As you mentioned, if you get knocked down, what the friggin' hell are you going to do? You're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to go, screw this. And, just give up. No, in life, you're going to do it. In your career, you're going to do it. You're just going to do it in every aspect of your life. And that's where the results come from. Like I got
Yes.
chucked out the country in 2011 because my lawyer hadn't gone for my extension. It took me 5 times to go back to immigration to get my waiver to come back into the country. During that time, I've lost my home. I've lost my 2 investment properties, had to foreclose and whatnot. But if I had not kept going back and back, of course I was disappointed. Of course I felt like crying. I've just left my life and my pets and everything in the US. But you just have to be consistent to the cause. And when you reflect back like I do now, I'm like, good God, thank God I didn't give up.
It's that old adage of adapt or die, and like you can have a plan and you can go, this is what I'm going to do. But what happens when you get hit with that fucking wrench the first time? Like that's who is really going to tell me who you really are. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care how good you can be when life is going well. Like that none of that matters to me. I care about how good you can be when life is kicking you in the teeth and will not let up. Who are you in that moment? And that will tell me everything I need to know about you, right? And I think that's why ultimately I was so drawn to bodybuilding, because it was a tool for development, right? Not even just a physical development, but like a mental toughness development, right? And like a maturing process, right? Of like going through these things and finding out like, how do I work a regular 9-to-5 job while still trying to build as much muscle as possible and then eventually get on stage? Like, how do you manage all these different aspects of life? And even to the point where like I eventually had to juggle prepping while being a single father, like that was a whole nother ball game in and of itself. And it's like all of those things and all of that adversity that I intentionally decided I'm going to put myself through helped me develop into who I am today and has created the foundation that I have. So all these people who are looking for the easy route here are missing out on this opportunity to develop as a person, not just muscles, right? Because like you said, you're in your 50s now, and God willing, we all get to our 50s, 60s, whatever, right? And you're still able to function. You're still able to do these things. And that muscle doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Like it does, not from a show perspective, but like, can I stand up off a couch, right? Like, can I still do those things, And like, if your only sole goal is how crazy can my physique be, and you don't get any of the other benefits of this stuff, you're missing out on a big portion of what you can be doing through this process.
1,000%, 1,000%. When I got into bodybuilding initially, I'd given up motocross. I've been racing motocross from the age of like 6 to the age of 19. Had a lot of accidents, a lot of injuries. And so when I actually got into weight training, now I'm looking at the foods that I'm consuming. I was just trying to get in calories when I was racing motocross because you'd expend so much. I didn't care what it was coming in. But then when you start training and start reading the magazines, because there was no internet back then, you start looking at the nutrition, the supplementation. Then the biggest thing that I found that changed me was my brain. It's now I was feeding this other organ that I hadn't fed properly before. We know about the gut-brain axis, and that inflammatory response can lead to a chemical imbalance in your brain. So when I was at school, I couldn't retain anything. I hated school. I didn't want to be there. I want to be at home on the farm, racing motocross and all that sort of stuff, And then when I went to college, though, in the 90s now to study international health and sports therapy, I retained everything. I was able to retain all the content because now I'm waking up, I'm getting blood flow to the brain in the morning. I'm eating nutrient and oxygen-rich foods that are feeding my brain. So it completely changed me mentally, like instantly. And that's what's really kept that addiction for me. It's pushing those limits, of course, but we know that bodybuilding is associated with longevity, whether that be squat strength, grip strength, or the foods that we eat. So I always think, is this going to heal my future today? This decision is either going to heal it or harm it. So, I think it's an essential part of everybody's life. It doesn't have to be massive muscles to be on stage, but you need to have that muscle density to protect your bone density and, of course, be metabolically active.
100%, man. And Alex Hormozy, I saw a clip of him talking about this, and he's like, I look at everything through a lens of, will my 85-year-old self be happy with the decisions that I've made right now? You know, and like I think that's such an incredible tool to use, because it's like when you're caught up in the moment of a decision right now, like sometimes it's hard to navigate through, is this a right decision or a wrong decision, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at it as like an 85-year-old who like, hey, look, I spent 85 years of my life abusing my body. I'm not happy with myself now. Or I spent 85 years of my life supporting myself to be able to live a long and comfortable life, not just live, right? I don't want to live to 90 if the last 10 to 15 years of my life I'm having to be supported by like other people picking me up and other people having to, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like some things will be out of my control, but like the things that I can control, of like my brain function and my overall general health, that kind of stuff, if I can take care of those things, then hopefully I'm going to be able to live a much better life when I'm older, you know. And I just think too many people, like obviously in your early 20s and stuff, like it's hard to see get away from that young man thing of like proving yourself and trying to make something of yourself. But then once you start to realize like, oh, I can still do that without completely ruining my longevity, like it's a pretty good thing, you know. And I talked about this with somebody else the other day on a podcast of like, I still go to the gym and eat the way I did when I was competing and getting on stage, because I know how good I feel from it, right? Like I don't focus on, fuck, I got to go do an hour of cardio. Like, oh, that sucks. I focus on how good do I feel when I get off that treadmill and I'm done and I'm covered in sweat and like my body feels lighter and I hit that crazy session and like I hit a PR and like how good I feel from that. Yeah, I might be sore, but like I kind of enjoy that. Like those are the things that I focus on, not on like how hard is this about to be when I go in there, you know. And it's like take away the things that are detrimental about bodybuilding, of like getting to really crazy lean points and then PEDs, and bodybuilding is a pretty damn good thing for you for a longevity standpoint, you know.
Yeah. And you know, I totally agree with that, because I eat the same way, because I'm a boring eater. I like to eat what is considered in this day and age to be boring, bland food. You know, if I go to an Italian restaurant, if I go to a Mexican restaurant, I'm still just ordering steak and rice. It's the same shit for me. I'm not very experimental when it comes to that. But you so rightly said, you know, I don't eat anywhere near as much as I used to. I don't feel that I need to, and I have different goals, but I love the way that it feels. And the thing is, now we do have social media. You don't know who's around. So it keeps you accountable to a certain degree to eat good food. You don't know who's bloody looking, you know? So I like that. And that's what I loved about the video trainers, is what, you know, filming those video trainers. The last one I did was like 2 years ago. Yeah, that was it. 2 years ago. I guest posed on a stage here at a bodybuilding show. And I felt that it was no different to how I live my life every day anyway. You know, I ate less food. You know, I'm still working the same hours. I'm still doing the same things. It's not taking any more time out of my day. I'm just eating less, you know, carbohydrates or whatever. Basically, it's just the same process of what we live day in and day out. Not because you do it for a living and people will justify it's easier for you. No, it's not. We just choose to chase the hard shit.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, completely agree. And like, it's always funny to me when people are like, well, you're an online coach and you work from home, so of course you can do all these things. It's like, okay, what about the years that I was a manager of a supplement store at 23? Like, what about those years? What about the years that I was selling cell phones? What about the years I was selling beer? What about the years, like, what about all these other scenarios that you want to talk about where I still made this thing happen? I got on stage on bodybuilding competition stages throughout my entire college journey. So taking finals, going to like multiple hours of classes a day, still going to the gym, still hitting my cardio, still eating the way I needed to. It's like you can make whatever excuse you want, or you can analyze your schedule and figure out where you can put it in. Because again, I said this in the last podcast that I did, unless you're Elon Musk running a million different businesses all day long, you have time. You just have to make it. And the only reason that you're like, oh, well, I'll start it on Monday is because you are hoping that the motivation fairy is going to show up and just give you this desire to want to go do this thing. And it's like, no, no, no. The way you create motivation is by doing the thing. Like the only way you create momentum forward is by making the momentum happen to begin with. It doesn't just show up. Like you have to put effort into this. And it's like, it doesn't matter what the scenario is. I work with CEOs. I work with 18-year-olds who are in college. I work with all different sorts of people. And the ones who succeed are the ones who figure out how to make it work with what they're doing, plain and simple, period.
Yeah, if you look at somebody on stage, or it could be like a before and after picture, let's say a before and after picture, you know that transformation has not come from the neck down. It's not the genetic disposition. It comes from the neck up. Like you
Yes.
could, like I've had this in the past where I've had a mother of one, a single mother, and she held down 3 jobs. Amazing transformation. She ended up with it in the Body for Life as one of my clients when I was living in Australia. And then there's another guy who had no commitments, no family, but he didn't get the results anywhere near as good as she did. And it all came up for one justifying the excuse and the other one justifying the commitment. That's the only difference.
It's such an interesting thing how some of the most busy people that we'll handle end up being the best possible clients because they don't give themselves another opportunity. They don't give themselves an out. There is no out. They have to do it plain and simple. And that's the life that they live, you know? And before we switch over to start talking about peptides, you know, like again, this thing that's been going around of like, there's a number of people who are talking about like don't do more than 1 set per body part and don't do more than 6 or 7 reps on an exercise because you'll get too much fatigue, and we want minimal effective dose and get the most out of this. And it's like, hey, if y'all think that works, go try a DTP leg session and then come tell me how you feel after. Like I look, I did those workout trainers when I was somewhere between 19 and 21. And I can still vividly remember those sessions because they were so fucking brutal. And that was kind of the fun of doing that. Like, that's why me and my buddy Tristan were like excited to do the DTP trainer, because it was like, oh, this is gonna be stupid. Like that was almost the reason that we did it. And now flash forward, we have all these people who are just terrified to deal with any level of fatigue. It's like, Jesus Christ, like I'd hate to see what the rest of your life looks like if you're avoiding fatigue all the time.
Yeah, I'd like to look at those physiques as well that are preaching this, you know, because I don't know of anybody other than, say, you know, going back to Dorian Yates, going back to Mike Mensa, and then Arthur Brown before him, and Casey Viada, that could do that. But that is another level of intensity when you're doing those sets. You know, that single set to absolute failure. Then you got your forced reps, and you got your negative reps, and it takes a certain mindset in order to do that. Most people can't do that, and at the end of the day, like I trained with Dorian many, many a times, and that was the protocol that I followed for a while. But the amount of injuries, niggling injuries, I mean, that I was dealing with in that type of training. So I train for longevity. If I know my first set is going to be like 50 repetitions and it's absolute failure, then I know that I'm getting a synovial fluid to the joints. I'm getting the blood to the connective tissue. I'm getting the neuro pathways firing. I'm going to be in a better position to not create injuries or have, get towards an injury. But at the same time, I'm creating a traumatic experience, regardless of the weight that is on that. You know, if I'm going to do, let's say, 30 reps on bench, incline bench press, I'm not going light. I'm doing at least 70 pounds for those repetitions, but I am pushing it to the higher rep, period, and then coming down. And I think that trauma, not only the weight or the reps, it's the overall trauma between your type 1, type 2A, type 2B that is creating the response, regardless of the weight. You know, of course, I think it should be combined. I like to do like a 3-week cycle now. So on lower reps, 1 week, medium reps the second week, and then like DTP on the 3rd week. As I'm getting a little bit older, I want my central nervous system to respond better because I still do a lot of mountain biking. I still like running. I still like swimming. So there's a lot of activity involved. So, I can't do high reps or DTP all the time. It needs to be cycled accordingly.
Yeah, and I think you have a great perspective as far as training is concerned, because like you not only were you friends and trained with Dorian, but you also did the same thing with Branch, and
Yeah.
like those two people could not be further on the spectrum from each other as far as like what they did in the gym. Were they both very intense trainers? Yeah, 100%. But Branch was not a low volume guy,
No.
right? Branch was like, do as much as you can until you fucking want to die, and then do a little bit more, like
Yeah.
and
Like I
and
remember
like
training with him in the absolute heat, like in 2006 in Metroflex,
oh
and hitting legs in there. And it wasn't the leg; well, of course, the volume. I'm used to the volume, but it's the heat combined with that volume, and knowing the amount of muscle that Branch has, which requires much more oxygen than me. That was next level. But I love that. Absolutely love that training. Where you're going to get on leg extension and you're going to do 100 reps. You're going
yeah.
to reach failure at 20, but now you're going to keep going down into 10s or 20s till you get 100. And that's the beginning. I love that.
Yeah, and the thing that pisses me off to no end is when people will like take videos of Branch or Jay or Ronnie, and they'll be like, "Well, this guy got this big, but if he did it more scientific, he could have been so much better." It's like, oh my god!
They'll
And
always
like,
come up with an excuse. So I did this. I did a crazy workout the other day, and someone said, "Yeah, you're never going to get shoulders with that form." I'm like, "Fuck it, well, let's have a look at your shoulders." You always have that all the time, and if you were to
uh-huh.
say, "Well, look at Ronnie's form, look at Branch's form," they would say, "Well, it's because of steroids." They'll come up with
Yeah,
another
100%.
excuse.
There's always
Then
gonna be something.
there's millions of them.
Yeah, there's always going to be something, and it's just honestly, it's another symptom of the world that we live in. Of just like it gets reactions when people go on and make these bold claims like this. That is the plain and simple of it. And like, it's long gone are the days of like, I, the, I'm going to use myself as an example, but I don't want it to come across in a cocky manner of like, when I got into this, I wasn't telling anybody that like this is the way to do things, right? I outsourced that and went to people that did programs like yourself or other people that have been doing this for a longer period of time and learned from them and just shared my experience. Like, I grew up in the social media era. I grew up when like influencers were just becoming a thing, right? So like I understand, like I was in that landscape, but I didn't immediately go on social media and start telling people I'm an expert and this is the way you should do this, because I had nothing to prove. I had nothing to show for that. Right. So instead I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm training. This is how I'm eating. This is what I'm doing, until I got to a point where I had enough experience where I felt comfortable coaching people. And then just continuing to build on that. But long gone are those days. And it's just like immediately, as soon as people get into the gym, they're like, this is the most efficient way to build this and this and that and the other. And it's like, well, who said that? Just a book you read or some other person who said it online? Like, how do you know they were right? Like,
Yeah,
they don't
everyone's an
allow
expert.
themselves the time to gather the experience to be able to give out something that's credible.
Yeah, it's someone. It's like asking a guide to take you around South Africa, yet they've never been to South Africa. Well, how the hell are they going to know who you're going to get around? You're going to get lost really, really quickly.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think we touched on quite a bit there in the training stuff. So we'll start to transition into the peptide world, and with we kind of already discussed about like as you've gotten older and whatnot, you've kind of transitioned into these different things to create better functioning body and be able to live a healthier lifestyle for a longer period of time. And I decided to stop competing about a year ago, and I'm 32 now. And now with the shift in no longer worrying about like how big can I be to get on stage, the goal has been is like to feel good, to be strong, and to be mentally clear. Like those are the biggest rocks for me. And one of the biggest things that I've introduced in the last 6 months has been peptides. And I have noticed just a massive, massive response, not only from myself, but my clients. So I'd be curious to hear, like, how did you get into the peptide world and stuff? And what kind of things are you playing around with right now?
Okay, so in 2017, as I was prepping for an Ironman triathlon, I'd tore my shoulder, my infraspinatus and supraspinatus, and I was trying to avoid surgery for a while until I could finish these two Ironmans. So, when I was swimming in the pool, or like in open water swimming, I should say, like I'm swimming around in circles because of my shoulder. I needed a line to follow in the pool. So I knew that I had to get it done. I just wanted to get these Ironmans out of the way first. So I started taking peptides like the BPC 157, GHKCU, and TB 500. And I was quite shocked that this is the first time I'd taken a quote unquote supplement that works so quickly. Of course, it didn't fix the tearing. I eventually had surgery, but then I took those peptides again, and it drastically increased my recovery time. I've had several surgeries, and I've taken what's described sometimes as the Wolverine stack on several occasions, and sometimes I'll have like niggling inflammation and injuries, and I've just found a huge success, obviously, with myself and my clients. And then I went down the rabbit hole of peptides because I'd already kind of got into the biohacking space in like 2015. And then I started speaking with experts like Phil Mikens, who's like a bioregulator leader in the world and in this industry. And then, studying a lot more. And then I started looking at things like epitalon help with preventing of the shortening of your telomeres, which dictate your biological age. And then peptides for eyesight, peptides for my liver, my pineal gland. And, crazy as it may seem, but at the end of last year, I knocked a huge chunk of cartilage out of my shoulder. Of course, I had stem cells anyway, just some weeks after, because I'd had a torn meniscus. And I thought, well, it's not going to hurt, but I don't think it will fix it because it needs a blood supply. I was speaking to a surgeon in New York that does 3D printing of cartilage, but unfortunately I wasn't a candidate based on where the injury site was. So I thought, okay, my last resort, I'll take a peptide bioregulator. It's called Sigma. I was planning on doing that in month 1. I was planning on doing the Cartilax, which is the injectable, in month 2. And then in month 3, I was going to put them both together because I like to work on peptides in isolation to see what works and what doesn't. I didn't have to get past month 1. With the peptide bioregulator Sigma, it completely restored my cartilage, blew me away. So, I absolutely love what peptides can do. These, obviously short chain of these amino acids that can restore whatever bodily function or organ that you have in a human body is just beyond me. Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Like in this day and age that we live is great. And I feel one of the reasons why I'm still able to train the way that I do and do the things that I do, I like to do my snowboarding and mountain biking and silly sports, is because of stem cells and peptides. It's really, really helped me. The hardest part every time I've had stem cells is not being able to train for 3 months following, to cause more inflammation. But other than that, I'll always do them for the rest of my life.
Yep. Yeah. So I have a mentor for my bodybuilding coaching, which I actually have a call with him right after we finish this. And he's the one that kind of started me down the path of peptides. And I started off with some stuff for like brain function. So I started off with Simax and I started off with Celink.
Yeah, those two always work very well in synergy.
I really, really like them, man. And like I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress, and the Celink helped out so much. It didn't change my anxiety. It just changed my response to it, right? It changed how I was able to process things that would typically make me anxious. And then Simax just has me locked in.
Yeah. Yeah,
so like I started with those two and really noticed a big difference in like my ability to output work and remember and retain stuff. And then from there, I added methylene blue. Mm-hmm. And again, another big leap in just mental ability, just ability to just sit down and knock a bunch of work out and be more productive and feel like my brain was more clear, not walking around with a lot of fog and stuff all the time. So I started with those few and then like slowly kind of moved more towards some fat loss ones. So I've been, again, like you, I like to start with them individually. So I started off with SLU and ran that for a little while, started to notice a little bit of benefits from it. And then I added in MOTS-C more recently, a couple of weeks back. And with adding those two in, I have noticed a massive change in, I didn't change my food at all. Like I kept my food exactly the same, which I eat 4 meals a day and I'm still eating typical bodybuilding meals and that kind of thing. But I noticed that like all of a sudden in a couple of weeks, my appetite started to spike, and then body fat started to come off, and I was sweating more in the gym, and I was looking leaner, and I was getting better pumps and all these things. And I was like, there's something to be had here. So I experimented with myself first and then started experimenting with clients. And now one of the coolest ones that like I've seen so far was I literally just had an athlete send me blood work yesterday, and he's an engineer on a fishing boat that goes out in the Bering Sea, and he's also a masters men's physique competitor. So he competes while he is out on a boat. And you want to talk about, yeah, it's really cool. You want to talk about somebody who deals with a absolute fuckload of stress and still manages to figure things out. It's this guy. But the problem is over time that stress got to a point where like his A1C was through the roof, his blood viscosity was not responding the way we needed to, and like he's in his 50s, so his cholesterol was starting to get skewed. So I was like, look, we need to make some changes, but I want to experiment with some retatrutide. We started like, I think a typical dose on retatrutide at the low end is like 1 to 2 milligrams a week. I started him at 0.5 in 6 weeks, a 6-week time period. His HDL went from 36 to 53. His LDL went from 129 to 100, and his A1C went from 6 to 5.4. And like that's insane in a 6-week period of time on all of those markers. Those don't change that fast, and especially at a dose like that, it's like, all right, there's something to be had here, you know. And like now, I'm really starting to see a lot of the benefits of places where we can put this in within given context of the individual.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing how far we've come. It's funny, a lot of people think this is new, but this has been around in Russia since the early 1900s. It's just now a lot of that research has been translated into English, and we're obviously understanding it. We're getting those compounds made here in the US. It's not just through tailor-made pharmacy, who it used to be, or compounding, which it was like 5 years ago. It's much more readily available. But you just have to be very careful because you're obviously getting it from a very good source. It's like the supplement or the CBD industry. It's just a wild west. You have no idea what you're getting, you know. So it's you know, it's tough because people are just buying it here, there, and everywhere and taking pictures and say, hey, is this okay? I'm like, no. Oh, I've already bought it. And I'm right, okay. So as long as you've got somebody like yourself that is suggesting the right peptide for that specific protocol, then great. Like I've just written an ebook now all on peptides for fat loss because there's so many of them out there, and I find that everybody is stacking all of them with a shotgun approach and not doing it the smart way like you are to see, okay, is this going to work for me? Because you're going to run it for a while to see if it has an effect. Okay, great, I'm going to add this to it now. Make sure that you are not running them too long. You'll want possibly like a mitochondrial uncoupler, you know, like your CJC or your LL31 cycled within that for it to then have its effect again. Much like otherwise, it's like taking caffeine and then more caffeine and then more caffeine. Well, you're not going to get the effect.
Right.
So, you know, there's so many of these different ones now that will specifically target like midsection fat loss, like your tesamorelin, your ipamorelin, like all these growth hormone secretagogues, like your CJC. That is phenomenal. And people are stacking them with the AOD, was it 9604, the tesamorelin, the 1,5 MIQ. And people are losing so much fat and they haven't even turned on or turn to a GLP yet. You know, they don't need to, unless obviously they got an appetite issue. Like you said, a retatrutide is going to be a much, much better play than like a semaglutide, for instance. But they're absolutely phenomenal. They just need to be put in the right hands.
Yes, I completely agree. And the thing is that a lot of people don't understand that are doing that shotgun approach is like a lot of these things have similar functions. And if you start taking too many of the same thing for too long and they're overlapping in what they do, you can actually cause some dysfunction on the back end of that too. You know, it's like more, again, just like everything else we talk about when it comes to the enhancement side of things is like more is not always better. Better is better. And that's what matters. And like, I think there's also a lot of people who are using the compounds incorrectly, especially in the GLP-1 category of like, look, there's going to be people who have a hard time with binge eating. It just is what it is, right? And especially in the world of like getting as lean as you possibly can, you're going to run into athletes like that. But for the majority of people who are outsourcing discipline to a bottle, I think that is the worst thing that you could possibly do. It's like, look, sure. Can we add this thing in so that you can get a handle on your appetite? Yes, but do not make that a crutch where this is the only way you can control yourself around food.
Yeah.
If you're outsourcing discipline and those kinds of things to the bottle, that's the wrong reason. If you have an A1C that's skewed, you have cholesterol levels that are skewed, there's appetite problems, there's all these other things that are going on. Cool. Let's put it in and use it for what it's supposed to be used for. Don't use it as something that is creating the response to happen. We got to check all the boxes, not just add a drug in and hope for the best.
Yeah, well, you're seeing it with the GLPs, specifically
Yes.
GLP-1s. People are going to the doctors, and the doctors, unfortunately, start them high and then put them higher. But there's no
Yes.
end game. There's no end game. It's not like we're going to try this for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months.
Yes.
They don't care. Unfortunately, of course, I'm generalizing. I'm just talking about my experience that I've heard with clients and the people that I know that are with doctors that are prescribing them. And as we know, there's no lifestyle habits or changes additional to that. And I see a lot of these people are eating the same shit that they were eating before, just less of it. So now, we know that they lose about 60% fat, great, but 40% of that loss is through muscle, not so great. So now they're not metabolically active. As they get a little bit older, they don't have an appetite anyway. So a lot of these people find it very, very difficult to put the muscle back on. So, there are obviously other GLP opportunities out there that having a different effect, like you said, your GLP-3, that I think needs to be explored a lot more.
Yeah, and it's the same symptom that we have in the medical world. Period. Right? It's just like your doctor who can prescribe testosterone. Like, what does every single doctor that doesn't really know what they're talking about do when they prescribe testosterone? They give you a testosterone prescription and they give you an Arimidex prescription, and they tell you take your testosterone on this day and then take your Arimidex this day. And it's like, why? Why do we need that? You don't have, if you're just taking a TRT dose and you're converting estrogen so hard that you need to take an Arimidex every single day, there's another problem that needs to be discussed. There's a much different issue at hand there. And it's like, yeah, sure, we should have those things on hand in case something happens, but maybe we're just smart about how we apply things in the first place.
Yeah.
So you're not taking drugs to deal with other drugs, because then that just leads to taking more drugs, because now you're taking drugs to deal with the side effects of the first drug and the second drug and the third drug. And it's like, well, this is how you end up in a position where you're 80 years old and you have a tackle box full of drugs that you have to take. It's not even supplementation. It's just prescription stuff that you're taking this drug to combat side effects of this drug to combat side effects of this drug. It's like, what are we doing here? Like,
well, we've seen the commercial, haven't we, with the disclaimer at the end that runs longer than the actual commercial itself. So it's nothing new here. This has happened for decades.
Yeah, it's almost one of those things where, like, when we're looking at the realm of doctors prescribing things like GLP-1s, it's like it should almost be a requirement that, like, hey, if we're going to give you a GLP-1, you have to also work with this nutritionist.
Of course.
And I don't think that's happening in a lot of situations. It's just, hey, here's a drug where you can just get lean and eat whatever you want, and that's how it's pitched to general population people. I don't think a lot of bodybuilders believe that to be the case, and I hope that's not what people think. But again, like we talked about, these things are all really tools. So we're coming up kind of towards the end here. But what peptides are you looking at right now that, like, either you're using or looking at using here soon that you're, like, really excited about?
So I'm doing like a lot of peptide bioregulators. Every now and again, I'll cycle them. So, for instance, like Visalutin for my eyesight. I've got 20/20 vision. I plan on keeping my 20/20 vision. Like last year, I noticed when I was in Wales, I was in a supermarket and I was looking down the aisles, and it was a blur, and I thought, oh my God, it's happening. It's finally happening. So I went straight on the Visalutin, and within like 2 months, my eyesight's perfect. So I'm like, perfect. And
I'll tell you, if that stuff works well enough, I have 20/400 and 20/500 vision. So
okay, I'll send you a link, brother. I'll send you a link. And those are, it's so easy. They're all. I've done the same with my pineal, with my liver, and like I said, I did the Sigma for my shoulder. But the only thing that I'm really kind of doing at the moment is like my joints, my connective tissue is good. is like epitalon. I'm doing epitalon as we're currently talking now, and
Yeah.
that's specifically for anti-aging, preventing the lengthening of my telomeres. Because the one thing that I love, I'm not into playing games. I'm not a gamer, but I love looking at my blood work and my biological age. So I'll test my biological age every year, and I've done that every year since 2014, and I've been able to reduce it every year, and that's
That's
my
cool.
game. Yeah, because
That's
when I
really cool.
started, my my biological age was 4 years older than my chronological, but I've been able to pull it all the way down. Now it's at 26, so that's why I'll do things like my epitalon, but I'll also do a couple of things that are a little bit fringe, like the rapamycin once a week. I'll do the metformin before bed. I'll do those things, but I'm fasting on my non-training days. But the biggest thing is I've focused on my sleep and focused on being in a parasympathetic state.
Yep.
Because I can be a bit of a hothead, so I try to be a very calm and more of a, I guess, spiritual person. Yeah, because
Yep.
it doesn't bloody feed us, mate. It really
Yeah.
doesn't. It gets us in bloody trouble, actually.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I just find, that is, people always ask, which is the best biohack for anti-aging? It's usually sleep, and it's usually your
Yes.
mental stability,
Yep.
being in that parasympathetic dominant state. So, setting that intention in the morning, being away from the phone for the first hour, doing some breath work, jumping the ice bath, meditation, stretching, whatever it may be. Just do something that's soft and easy to start your day, but make sure that you are recovered, because your recovery will dictate your longevity.
Yep. Now, the last question, and then we'll sign off here at the end. But as far as the peptide world is concerned, most of the time the conversation ends up going towards, well, these things haven't been tested in humans and whatnot, and that's where a lot of hesitancy comes into the peptides. What kind of rebuttal do you have for that side of things?
No, a lot of them have been tested in human studies. A lot of them in Russia, for instance, they've tested them on Russian athletes in the Olympics. In the first Olympics that they were on the peptides, I know that they had accelerated their biological age. Then the second Olympics, they reversed their biological age because of the peptides. There is a lot of human research out there. I don't think people are digging enough. But of course, there are a lot of animal studies with a lot of these fat loss agents. I think the AOD is an animal study as well. So, of course, it's going to be buyer beware. But if it works for you, if you decide to take the jump and it works for you, go for it. It's like DTP training. People would say, oh, there's no science that backs it up. Okay, then friggin' do it. It works for me. I don't give a shit about the science. I do in a certain way that it will be in context. But if it doesn't match the context that I'm actually experiencing, then it doesn't matter. I throw it out the window.
Yep, 100%. And that's a great way to end that. Is like, context is everything to anything that we're talking about with this. Is like, if it doesn't apply to your situation, then of course don't do it. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, of course.
Again, Kris, I appreciate you so much, man. This has been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you for a while. Like, I know we met a while ago, but really, man, I can't say enough. Like, you were a big inspiration into me becoming who I am today. So I really appreciate you, dude.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. One thing I'll say, it's so odd when I have people come up to me and say that, and I look at them and I'm like, dude, you're like 3 times the size as me. How did that happen? So, but it's like time goes so quick, but I'm absolutely honored that I'm putting out something there that has an impact, because I have no idea. You put it out there and you kind of forget about it, don't you?
Yep. Yeah, for sure, man. But no, seriously, those things had a massive impact on me and my development as far as like getting into the bodybuilding world. So like, I got a lot to thank you for, without you actually directly going, hey, Nick, this is for you. But anything you want to plug before we hop off here, man?
Well, while we're talking on video trainers, I did film and publish a video trainer like less than 2 years ago. It was about 1.5 years ago, and it's called the Legacy Video Trainer. People can go on my Instagram, click the link in my bio, go down here and access that 12-week video trainer. That's the one that I used to guest pose on stage, because I haven't been on stage since 2009, so I had to document it. But if anybody got any questions, they can hit me up on my Instagram, KrisGethin, Kris Gethin.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you so much. Anyone who is still watching, make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff, and we'll catch you on the next one.